What's up YouTube? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you again this week with a new video. Today is more of an educational video. I know there are some people watching my channel who don't really have an idea what I'm doing with these snakes in terms of genetics. So I really wanted to give a lesson / discussion about how these genes work and what we're doing as breeders to pass these along to offspring. So sit back and enjoy. We're going to be talking about all three species that I keep. Let's get into it. Today we're going to be starting off with the ball pythons, which is arguably, not even arguably, it is the most kept snake in the world. So let's start talking about those genetics, how it works. There's a few different types of genes and how they interact and how they get passed along. So let's start off talking about that. This snake is going to be my first demonstrator, and maybe to the lay person this doesn't look like anything special, but this snake has a gene and is visually expressing a gene called Orange Dream. And as you can see, hopefully, it does have a lot more of these orange tones here as opposed to a normal ball python. I'm going to put a picture of a normal ball python here to compare, but again, as you can see, all these orange tones. Now, if you took this snake and bred it to a normal ball python, the way this works, Orange Dream is what's called an incomplete dominant gene. So here's how it works. This is a single gene Orange Dream. If I bred it to a normal ball python, on average, 50% of the babies will be Orange Dream and 50% of them will be normal. Now, I don't have anyone to show, but I'll probably throw a picture up. There is what's called a super version of this. As you know, as you may know with genetics, how it works is there's two copies of the gene to express. That's kind of how it works. So with Orange Dream, it only has one copy of the Orange Dream gene there. Now when it has two copies, so if both parents, if I bred an Orange Dream to an Orange Dream, I have a 1 in 4 chance to produce a super Orange Dream, which is a much more orange snake than this, that will visually and genetically have both copies of the Orange Dream gene. Now, if I took that super Orange Dream that we talked about and bred it to a normal ball python, all of the babies have to visually express the Orange Dream gene. And this is because when you breed them together, the parent has to pass at least one copy along. Now, as I told you, when you breed an Orange Dream to a normal, you get 50%. So there's a 50% chance that the Orange Dream will pass. Well, when you have a super Orange Dream with two copies of the gene, there is a 100% chance that that parent is going to pass an Orange Dream gene onto the offspring, hence giving you an entire clutch of Orange Dream baby. And then we get into some more complexities. Now we're dealing with multiple incomplete dominant traits. This boy here, he's in shed, so he's not as pretty. This boy is a pastel banana GHI Mojave. Now that is 4 incomplete dominant traits. Now when you breed this to a normal, you have a 50% chance to hit each gene for it to pass along. Because of those odds, there's actually a 1 in 16 chance to reproduce this same boy within the offspring. However, as I mentioned, there's a 50% chance for any of these 4 genes to be passed along. So more than likely, you're going to have a pretty big variance in the clutch, showing some combination of all 4 of these genes, including some normals. Now, there's a chance that none of those genes pass along. So you could still get normals out of breeding this. Now, as we talked with the incomplete dominant traits, how there's 2 copies of the genes possible per allele. Now, when we start getting into the recessive traits like this boy is visually expressing the clown gene. And when you have a visual recessive, you need both copies of the gene to express it. So therefore, it's equatable to like the super form of the incomplete dominant traits. And then when this gets bred, so let's take for an example, I'm going to breed this boy to a normal ball python. Now forget the other incomplete dominant traits in there. Let's pretend he's a normal clown. All of the babies are going to be 100% heterozygous for clown. And heterozygous means it carries the trait. It carries one copy of the clown gene from this dad. Because he has the clown and 2 copies of the gene, he 100% has to pass along one of those genes to the offspring. And if we bred a clown to a normal, you're all going to get normals that are 100% heterozygous for the clown. Now is where you may say to yourself, well, what do I do with those offspring now that aren't visually expressing the clown, but they have 1 copy of the gene? How do I get that clown back? Well, if you took those offspring together, bred them, you actually have a 1 in 4 chance of producing a visual clown. Now, if you think about it, what I had said before, and I'll try to put this on the screen to make it less complex. So you have 1 copy of the clown gene in each offspring. There's a 50% chance that that offspring will pass along the clown gene, and there's another 50% chance that the other offspring will pass along the clown gene, leaving you with a 25% chance, or 1 in 4, of making a visual clown. Now is where it starts to get complex, because now we're dealing with what happens when you don't produce the visual clowns there. Well, if you take a Punnett square, and I will try to draw one here, you're going to see that there are 3 other chances left. And those 3 other chances, 2 out of 3 of the chances are going to be heterozygous for clowns still. And then there's going to be 1 out of those 3 that will not be at all. It's going to be a normal. Thanks to shed testing technology, we are able to see for this now. It used to be left up to chance, and it still is. You could shed test or you don't have to. However, now for babies you may want to hold back with more complex genes, you can get them shed tested and find out if those 66% possible het babies are in fact 100% heterozygous for the clown. I do want to make clear before getting into the next segment that there's a lot more complex things that go into it. Then you start dealing with double recessive, so 2 recessive genes in the mix, and then you throw the incomplete dominant genes in the mix, and it all makes for a jumble of good fun, in my opinion. You take some gene-packed animals and you make something together, and it makes it really good, really fun. That's honestly, in my opinion, what keeps this ball python hobby going, is just the sheer amount of possibilities, chance, playing the odds. It's just a really fun thing, but I am trying to explain it on a very basic level to make people understand at least what's going on. But yeah, hopefully you guys are taking something from this. The last and final thing I wanted to mention, now this is a complex one, guys, so let's try to strap in, is polygenetics. Now, recently, and it's been scientifically, the shed testing technology has proved that the gene desert ghost, which is what this animal is actually a polygenetic trait, which means it requires gene interaction on 2 different chromosomes, so 2 different genes on different separate chromosomes to interact in order to visually express an animal. Before this technology came out, desert ghost was regarded as a simple recessive trait like the clown gene we were talking about before. However, it's apparently been proven that it's not as much so. However, many people, including myself, are still kind of treating it like it is. But I do want to explain this in the midst of what's going on, because this is very recent news and it's very interesting to see, and may give some insight to some other genes in the future, because this shed testing technology is pretty impressive, and I think we're just going to keep seeing breakthroughs go on and on with certain genes when it comes to these ball pythons. So let's talk about this a little bit. As I briefly mentioned, according to this science, desert ghost is a gene that is expressed when there is a gene located in 2 separate areas, and they've so far labeled this as DGA and DGB. Now, there are other different combinations of where this works, and I'm sorry if I'm not explaining it well enough, but I just want to put out there that it takes now like 2 different genes of interaction in order to produce visual animals. Now, it's apparently been shown that you could take almost 2, heterozygous animals, so not visually expressing, and not make any visual desert ghosts at all, because the genes that you have aren't interacting properly with each other, or you don't have 2 copies. It's a whole thing. I would recommend watching RGI's video. There was also a podcast on MJ's show, the Trap Talk podcast with Justin Kabelka and Summer from Canova, explaining this a little bit better. So I highly recommend you watch that if you are interested with the complexities a little bit more. Something I also took away from that recent breakthrough in the genetics is that that may be why we see that certain recessive traits aren't compatible. Now, for the more advanced ball python keepers here, you may know what I'm talking about. Stuff like the different lines of axanthic, they're apparently not compatible, as well as some of the lines of hypo or ghost. That may tell you that those lines aren't the same gene on the same chromosome, because as we discussed, if you match those up, you would get a visual. So it's very telling that lines like the regular hypo, orange ghost, and blue ghost, since they are all compatible, that they are in fact the same thing genetically. They've just been line proven to express a little bit differently visually. But because they're compatible, it tells us that they are the same gene on the same chromosome. Now, some of you may not like to hear that, but scientifically that's what it has to be. The blue ghost, while it's great, shout out to Derek at Big D's Pythons for, producing more. However, it is the same thing genetically as orange ghost. It's just producing this bluer hue, and that can come from line breeding, which is, basically unnatural selection, taking genes that look alike and trying to enhance it more, which we're going to talk a little bit more about with the Texas rat snake. Now here's one of my original snakes. He is a normal scaleless Texas rat snake, so just expressing the visual recessive gene of scaleless, which we talked about last time. Now all of the genes worked with the Texas rat snakes are simple recessives, meaning it has to visually express, or it needs both copies of the gene to visually express the gene. And this is the scaleless. So you see a lot of the orange coloration. And as you know, we had some babies, and that's what I really wanted to get into. I think species like this could use a hand with line breeding, or the, unnatural selection, and taking those best genes to try to enhance, what you see visually on the animal. So again, simple recessive genetics, but now we go into some of the line breeding things. So as I showed last time, this is the dad of the babies I'm about to show you with the Texas rats. And as you can see, he has a pretty wonky pattern. All of this white coloration and the black speckling, it is just super interesting what that's doing, and it would be, really a breakthrough if this could somehow be passed along to the offspring. Now, it hasn't been seen so far with what I've produced that he's producing any of this speckling like this, but there is some interesting pattern there that I definitely want to work on moving forward. Now, here is a female scaleless Texas rat snake that I produced within the clutch. Let's not worry about the other recessive genes in there, just a visual scaleless. But look at all of this side patterning that you see on this snake. I hope the camera is picking this up well. All of this funky side stuff going on. Very nice coloration as well, a lot of orange. But the side stuff is what's really interesting to me. And to see if we could pass this along is going to be an interesting breakthrough, because I think this is just super cool patterning, and it will change the dynamics going forward about producing some pretty scaleless Texas rat snakes. Last but not least, it's definitely a fan favorite here at Meteoric Serpents. We have the Thai bamboo rat snake, or OP coxeye. I'll put that on the screen for you to go research. Now, there are 6 different subspecies of this snake. It's Oreocryptophis, Porphyracea, coxeye. So there are 6 subspecies of the Porphyraceas, and this is the coxeye. Now, with this snake, it's just simple. There's no known genetic mutations with these guys. I simply have them for the beauty of an orange snake with black racing stripes. It really doesn't get better than that. Would it be cool if there were genetic mutations? Potentially. I'd be interested to see what they can do. But for right now, I think this is simply an absolutely beautiful snake. I really think the only way we're going to see mutations with this species is if there's some sort of genetic anomaly. And, that's exactly what they are, mutations. It's going to take, a mutation from random breeding to see something come out of this. Now, one thing I do want to talk about with this species is that within the 6 subspecies, they are hybridized quite a bit. I see a lot on Morph Market. I'm totally not a fan of this, to be honest. It takes the phenotypes of each of them and kind of puts it on the animals. In my opinion, it's kind of just dirty. It muddies the waters. I'm not a fan of hybrids whatsoever, no matter the species. So, if you're hearing this out there and are curious about this, just make sure you're not picking up hybrids if your goal is a standard cockeye, because this is one of the subspecies I see hybridized a lot. That was a longer one, guys. I hope I explained that well to some degree. Helps you guys understand a little bit more about the genetics I'm working with and what we as breeders strive for and how we're thinking things over in our head about how to produce the offspring that we want. I know I didn't get into some of the more complex things for all the, veteran ball python people out there. I did want to keep it simple for this video for the purpose of just basic education. I hope you all took something from this. If there's anything that I missed or I didn't explain super well, feel free to leave a comment below and let me know, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about this. Guys, but I just want to say that is all for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please feel free to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you know every time we post. We are back to weekly uploads. I was on vacation last week, so I do apologize for the missed video. We're going to be working on that, try to stay consistent, be on the lookout for our shorts throughout the week. And guys, as you know, it is Saturday, which means tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Sophisticated Ignorance podcast with me and Wiz Constrictors. Go to Wiz Constrictors channel. It's going to be in the description. 10 p.m. Eastern. We're going live. We're talking snakes. We're talking everything. We just have a good time. Come hang out with us. I truly appreciate it. Make sure you're supporting Wiz on his channel. That's pretty much it for today, guys. Like I said, let me know what you guys thought, and have a good night. Peace.